350 more Royal Marines joined there in recent weeks. And in Estonia, from one brigade of 1,000 soldiers, we are now increasing to 2 brigades, 2,000 soldiers, and a command headquarters group as well. And of course, Boris Johnson also highlighting that there are enhanced air assets going to Romania to help in the policing operation of NATO skies, not Ukrainian skies, we should add. And also there are naval assets going to the Eastern Mediterranean, the Baltic, and up into the Arctic, really off Norway. The HMS Prince Elizabeth, our supercarrier, one of 2 HMS Queen Elizabeth class supercarriers that we have, going up there as well, as it is NATO's command-ready platform. So Boris Johnson, in addition to talking about the issue, of course, of enhancing NATO's eastern flank, also vowed to do more to help the growing humanitarian crisis. So we have on the borders of Ukraine in various countries, like Poland, for instance, many thousands of people now spilling over the borders, well over 600,000 as of late yesterday. So today's figures will be much higher than that. Over 7 million internally displaced as well, getting away from the worst of the fighting. And the worst of the fighting today has been in the northeast city of Kharkiv, the second largest city in Ukraine, where an administrative building came under missile attack. The Ukrainian authorities say it was the Russians who fired a missile directly at that headquarters building. They say that 10 people within that building have died, 20 others at least have been injured, and they're still searching for survivors. In addition to that, they also say that neighbouring neighbourhoods in that area have also been attacked, have come under shelling and rocket attack from the Russians as well. Inside that headquarters building, it is a devastating sight. There were shots that emerged a little earlier of the rescue services taking what was clearly a dead body from the building, covered in a blanket, taken down the stairs inside the headquarters of this building. As I say, 10 confirmed fatalities so far. And outside on the street, you get an indication of actually the power of that missile that came in and struck this building, because every single window in the front of that headquarters building was blown out in this blast. And in the street, the Freedom Square, this well-known square in the centre of Kharkiv, a central plaza for many people to come to, it's just covered in rubble and detritus, Darren.
Indeed, Mark, and of course that attack in Kharkiv has been, as we can see from the pictures, extensively covered by the cameras. The concern is also, away from the cameras, that Russia may be using even more aggressive tactics such as cluster bombs and vacuum bombs. Is that the case?
Yes, this is Ukraine's ambassador to the US has been alleging that the Russians have used what's known as a thermobaric device, which is a horrific bomb. They vary in size, but effectively what they do is they explode at a very significant rate that sucks the air out of the surrounding environment. They're used to try to displace people in underground tunnels, complexes, bunkers and alike. Now, images were released yesterday of the situation in Kharkiv, again in a residential area, that showed what appeared to be cluster bombs being dropped on that residential neighbourhood. Again, these are weapons absolutely horrific because of the indiscriminatory nature of these weapons. They have not been used by quite a number of countries around the world just because of the indiscriminate way in which these weapons operate. But Russia has used them significantly over the years in a number of conflicts that it has been involved in Syria as well. And we know that Russia has used thermobaric weapons.
OK, Mark White, as always, appreciate your analysis. Mark Keane across events there in Ukraine for us on GB News, and he'll have continued coverage throughout the day. Let's bring in the Liberal Democrat MP, Christine Jardine, who joins us down the line. Christine, thank you so much for joining us. Just first of all, on what the Prime Minister was saying there repeatedly about NATO, specifically the UK, not getting involved in a no-fly zone. We know he's been asked about this twice today in both Poland and Estonia. Do you think that is the right approach, that NATO simply cannot afford to get involved in direct contact with the Russians?
Well, at this stage, we certainly don't want to be getting involved in a direct conflict with the Russians. Our attention must be, at this point, in getting as many people safe in Ukraine and making sure those economic sanctions, which has taken far too long to introduce, far too long to do something which, opposition MPs have been calling for years in this country, for action against all the Russian money swirling about in our economy. It's taken too long to do that. They should be focusing on that. And none of us want to see this escalate further, but we do want to ensure that the West stands with Ukraine, and the Russians are absolutely convinced, there can be no doubt whatsoever of our unity in this. And I think that is one of the things. The Prime Minister is actually right. I think that has taken Vladimir Putin by surprise, and we have to keep emphasising it.
I mean, in saying that, many people would, I don't want to make this, but just out of fairness, many people would say Britain, aside from sanctions, has been at least sending military equipment to Ukraine ahead of many other European nations. And in the end, at the moment, that is what Ukrainians need on the ground. Just in terms of the visa issue, because that's clearly been a big political issue today, Priti Patel, the Home Secretary, being in front of MPs and has now extended that scheme to an additional 100,000 Ukrainians. Again, I assume that is welcome news on your part.
It's still too little, too late and too slow. What we need is a really fast, effective scheme for people to get out of Ukraine. And the Home Secretary still hasn't given us that. Yes, it's an improvement, but it's still not enough. I mean, imagine saying to people who are fleeing basically with what they can carry, that they have to apply for a visa. We shouldn't be asking people to apply for a visa. We have a tremendous record in this country of compassion, of welcoming people in, of supporting refugees, right back to the Huguenots. And here we are now saying, well, you know what, you'll have to apply. That's not good enough. And she should also be, the Home Secretary should also be withdrawing her refugees bill, which will make it more difficult for people. These are people in an emergency. We need to be taking an emergency response and acting quickly. And we're simply not doing that. The government's been dragged kicking and screaming.
Yeah, but the Home Secretary did repeat this again today, and she says she's got access to intelligence briefings, that it is possible the Russians may well infiltrate some of the Ukrainians fleeing, and that there still needs to be checks simply for security reasons. That does seem, at least from the outside, entirely reasonable, doesn't it?
To me, it doesn't seem reasonable to say to people who are fleeing with their lives, well, hang on a second, we have to stop and check that you're not a security risk. By all means, be aware of the danger of Russians. And let's face it, why would Russians be coming to this country as well? There are Russians in this who are suffering. There are Russians in this who are afraid for their lives. This is not the Russian people that are causing a problem. It's Vladimir Putin. And for us, as Liberal Democrats, we want to see us live up to our history, our traditions, our reputation for being a country that welcomes people in time of need. And that is what we should be doing now. Not crossing by on the other side, but being the Good Samaritan and saying, how can we help? What can we do? That's what we should be doing now. And that's what this government isn't doing enough of.
OK, Christine, I appreciate your time for us on GB News this afternoon. There's Christine Jardine, the Liberal Democrat MP, joining us from the House of Commons. Do get in touch at gbviews at gbnews.uk, or indeed tweet us about this latest situation, particularly what you may well think of what the Home Secretary has announced today. Coming up, as you can see, we're going to be talking about FIFA kicking Russia out, the action by sporting groups, and we'll have continuing coverage of the situation inside Ukraine as we enter day 6 of that military campaign, that military invasion by the Russians. But first, at 3:33, here's the latest news with Rosie Wright.
Good afternoon. Let's get you up to date on GB News. The UK has stepped up sanctions against Russia, banning all ships with any connection to the country from entering British ports. The Prime Minister is now in Estonia, having met his counterpart in Poland this morning. Boris Johnson said the UK and its allies must isolate Vladimir Putin and his regime from the international community for his actions.
It's clearer, day by day, from the way the Ukrainians are responding, that President Putin has made a disastrous miscalculation. His troops have not been welcomed into Ukraine as he prophesied, and instead the Ukrainians have mounted an astonishing and tenacious resistance.
Ukraine is facing another day of heavy bombardment. The Foreign Ministry has released a video showing a missile hitting a government building in Kharkiv. The Interior Ministry says at least 10 people have been killed in rocket attacks in that city today. Satellite images show a Russian military convoy stretching for an estimated 40 miles, heading northwest of the capital of Kiev. Craters can also be seen at a military airbase, and an oil terminal was damaged after being hit by Russian missiles. The chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court says he'll open an investigation into possible war crimes in Ukraine. Amnesty International says cluster bombs hit a nursery last week, and Ukraine's ambassador to the US says Russia has used vacuum bombs. Both are banned under the Geneva Convention. In an address to the European Parliament, Ukraine's president accused Russia of targeting civilians.
Nobody's going to break us. We are strong. We are Ukrainians. We want our children to live. It seems to me that is fair. Yesterday, 16 children died, and again, President Putin will say that this is an operation and we are beating the military infrastructure. Where are our children? What military factories do they work at? On which rockets? Maybe they ride in tanks.
You're now up to date here on GB News. We're on your TV, online and also DAB+ radio. Now, shortly we'll be back to Darren with the briefing.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
A very welcome back to the briefing here on GB News. 22 minutes to 4 o'clock on this Tuesday afternoon. You're watching us on TV, listening to us on the radio, or indeed also maybe watching and listening online. Thank you for your company. Only one story in time today, and that, of course, is the situation with Russia and Ukraine. The Prime Minister has been in both Poland and Estonia this afternoon, and at a press conference, the Prime Minister vowed to bring maximum pressure against the Russian President Vladimir Putin. Meanwhile, the NATO Secretary-General declared that the West has never been so united. Joining me in the studio for a reaction to that, our political correspondent, Tom Harwood. Tom, we've seen the Prime Minister, haven't we, on this tour again, going to actually a base where British soldiers are based in Estonia today. A reiteration of that support for NATO's eastern flank, but a constant reminder to everyone, not least of all the Kremlin, that the UK and NATO are not prepared to get directly involved with the Russians.
Absolutely. It's important to make that distinction between those Baltic member states of NATO, where British troops have been operating for quite some time, where British troops and indeed equipment is bolstering that flank, is warning Putin away from going further. But of course, Ukraine is not a member of NATO. Ukraine does not have that Article 5 protection whereby an attack against one is an attack against all. And consequently, none of the NATO member states are willing to commit ground troops or indeed air cover to Ukraine. Anything that would risk direct confrontation between NATO troops and Russia would be the first time in human history that there were two nuclear powers at war with one another, and the consequences of that would be even graver than the grave situation we're seeing in Ukraine right now.
And what's been the fallout today from the visa system? We know it's been extended. Priti Patel in the Commons. We just heard from Christine Jordine, a Lib Dem, who thinks it doesn't go far enough. Labour, while welcoming the news, still want the Home Secretary to go further.
Well, this is, to some extent, what a lot of people were expecting yesterday, the extension to wider family, not just incredibly close family. There were some peculiar cases we were hearing about this morning of, for example, people's mothers not being able to be brought over when their children lived in this country. Well, that situation is now resolved. There were rules around under 18 and over 18, dependent or not. Now, close family, so that's parents, that's siblings, that's children of those already living in the UK can come. And also, of course, this sponsorship scheme that is being set up, whereby companies and individuals, if they so wish, can sponsor individuals to come over from Ukraine. It's about making sure there's a connection to the UK from those who come from Ukraine. Of course, the overarching message here, though, from the government is they don't expect that many Ukrainians to want to make the journey all the way to the UK. Certainly those who have family here, who have close connections here, of course. But for the most part, it's likely that Ukrainians will want to settle much closer to home, nearer the region. Of course, they, for the most part, have the view that they would like to return to Ukraine once we're through this awful period. And many of them, as we've seen on those images of trains and transport out of Ukraine, are leaving family members behind. So many awful pictures of men, of husbands, of even some sons waving off mothers, daughters and young children on those trains out of Ukraine. So understandable that many families don't want to leave their fathers that far away. But of course, an expansion in that visa scheme for the UK today. OK, Tom, as always, thank you very much indeed. And Tom's going to stay with us for the rest of the programme. We're going to go now, though, and look beyond what's happening here in the UK, because in the last few hours, the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has said that more sanctions against Russia are certainly going to be added. That is, the Russian economy, of course, went into freefall yesterday, with many Russians going to local cash points in Moscow to try and retrieve their savings before the damage got any worse. We also saw interest rates jacked up to a record high of 20%. Well, joining me now is the former Minister for Foreign Affairs of Russia, who served under the former President Boris Yeltsin. That is Andrei Kozyrev. Thank you very much indeed, Andrei, for joining us here on GB News. First of all, what is the situation in Russia in terms of public perception about what has gone on in relation to Ukraine and the concerns about the economic impact?
You know, Russia is a closed country and has been so for a long time. So it's very difficult to actually evaluate what is real public opinion situation in Russia. I grew up in the Soviet Union, and it was under the Iron Curtain, and it seemed to many, especially outside, that the Soviet Union was a monolith, but it was not. One day, everything just crumbled, and it turned out that Russian people understood much better than anyone thought what really happened. So I think there is room also for improvement of Russian public opinion, but unfortunately, it cannot be done without some kind of shock therapy. So the West should, I think, throw now all its weight, especially economic weight, the sanctions as much as possible, so that it would have a sobering effect. It would destroy the kingdom of lies in Russia, that the whole world is weak or unable to act and so on. So, and then fine-tune. There is room for fine-tuning, but you rather make a strongest possible strike and then fine-tune, rather than other way around.
And we're just looking at pictures here of Russians yesterday queuing up outside cash points to try and retrieve some of the money. Very long queues indeed. The connection to you, Andrew, is not great. We're going to persevere with it because I want to get a sense of what is the thought process here of Vladimir Putin, in the sense that do we think he making these decisions somewhat unilaterally, or are there advisors around him, and how much pressure can they bring to bear on the Russian president?
I think he has some advisors. Some of them just seem to be foolhardy, hardliners. But again, for them, it would be the tougher the situation, at least momentarily, it will be a wake-up call. Because nobody lives in somewhere in the tower, and having no connection to other people. But some of those are, just bootlickers, so to say. They are yes men, and like foreign minister, for instance, unfortunately, and some others. So he probably lives in his echo chamber. But again, there is only one way, is to increase the costs of the aggression, both on the ground, and that means weapons to the Ukrainian resistance, and economic sanctions, because those lines, they won't be unnoticed. They cannot be unnoticed in a matter of a week or so. So it's unfortunately, I know it's my people, but it's a time for shock therapy, both on the ground and in economic terms.
Okay. Andrei, the line is not great to you there in Florida, but thank you so much indeed for joining us here on GB News. That's Andrei Kozyrev, who had served as a foreign minister to President Yeltsin back, of course, in the 1990s. Lots of you been getting in touch. Caroline says, I was closely observing Mr. Putin's face and body on TV yesterday when he's speaking. I'm generally quite good at sensing character, so she claims, she says that Putin is not in a good place. He looks very worried, fighting with his own conscience. Kim says, if NATO or the UK or the EU do not provide air support in a no-fly zone over Ukraine, then the West are effectively leaving the aggression of Putin and Russia and now Belarus to go on until Russians take Ukraine. It's a disgrace. It will be too late when the West wakes up. Of course, the Prime Minister reiterating, though, that would mean that NATO would be in direct conflict with Russia, which would, of course, have all sorts potentially of consequences. Tom Harwood, our political correspondent, still with us here in the studio. Staying again away from these shores, the European Parliament meeting in Strasbourg today. And we know, don't we, that President Zelensky submitted, hasn't he, an application for Ukraine to join the EU and asking for it to be expedited.
He has. He's given the European Parliament there a challenge. He said, prove that you're with us. Don't just say that you're with us. Of course, he was addressing the European Parliament, many of the members of which were wearing the blue and yellow colours of Ukraine, that were showing their support in so many ways. And it must be said that the European Union has actually stepped up to the plate in so many ways, more than people were expecting, especially in the last few days when it comes to sanctions and indeed arms. That's going as far as Britain has on many of these issues, although Britain's still pushing a little bit further on issues like SWIFT, trying to cut Russia completely out of that system, whereas European countries are holding back a little bit still. But it has to be said that the West is overwhelmingly united here. Now, Zelensky has requested immediate accession, which is a tricky process. Currently, Ukraine is not even a candidate country, as they're called. There are a number of candidate countries, Turkey perhaps most notably. That doesn't mean that they're particularly close to joining the European Union. It's a slow process to do so, and you have to prove all sorts of economic benchmarks ordinarily to join the European Union. Charles Michel, though, of the European Union, said today that he would look seriously at Ukraine's request, and potentially they could become a candidate country. It must be said, though, being a candidate country is very different from becoming a member. It's a long, long road.
Indeed, Tom. Thank you very much indeed, Tom Hall, with us in the studio. Let's return to the story we were talking about a little bit earlier, and that was the issue of visas and Ukrainians coming here to the UK. We heard from the Home Secretary, Priti Patel, in the Commons earlier, where she announced the expansion of the visa system for Ukrainian family members to come here to Britain. Under new plans, adult parents, grandparents and children over 18 and siblings of those settled in the UK will be permitted entry. However, she rejected pleas for a full visa waiver, which has been used inside the EU, pointing to security concerns. Well, joining me now is the Labour MP, Bill Esterson. Bill, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Just first of all, on this expansion today, welcome news, I assume, from the Labour Party, that the government has listened to what you guys have been calling for, essentially.
Well, thanks very much, Darren. You're quite right. We were increasingly concerned at the problems that people were facing trying to escape from the appalling problems of the aggression by Vladimir Putin, the invasion, the terrible scenes that we've all seen on our TV sets, the deaths of civilians killed by Putin's forces, and people fleeing for their lives, and the bureaucracy and red tape that was still in place from the UK really was completely unacceptable when people were trying to join family in this country. So what we asked for over the last few days was for those restrictions to be removed and for normal visa arrangements to be removed for people trying to join family members in the UK. Now, some of that was announced by the Home Secretary. You're quite right to say that, but I think it does beg questions about just how far the government has gone. We heard stories of people being denied access over the last few days for wider family members and so on. So I hope that has been addressed. But what we're really after is a simple route to sanctuary. That isn't too much to ask for people fleeing for their lives from a democracy in Europe at this time under such appalling oppression and the invasion by Vladimir Putin.
But Bill, do you understand the Home Secretary's concern around security? She has talked yesterday and today, and she said this comes from briefing, and I'm assuming as Home Secretary she gets pretty high-level briefing, suggesting there are concerns that Russians could well infiltrate potentially some of the refugees who would arrive in Britain, and that is why they cannot simply get rid of visas altogether.
And of course, security checks are an important part of the process, but that doesn't mean you need to have all of the normal visa arrangements that prevent people from coming. The European Union is 27 countries who've managed to agree to allow people into the EU, and they will have had exactly the same security briefings that the UK government has had, and they found a way around it. I'm sure if the EU can do it, then the UK can as well.
And just funny, Bill, what we've got you, Keir Starmer today saying that any MPs that seem to attack NATO or indulge in what he called essentially trying to equate Russian aggression with, the potential actions of the West, that there would be no room for them in the Labour Party. Do you agree with that?
I think you're referring to reports from the Parliamentary Labour Party from last night. Well, I have the advantage of having been there, Darren, and well, I'll just say this to you. We don't report on what is said at a private meeting of Labour MPs, especially when it's misreported in the way that Keir's remarks were.
Well, then, if you don't want to talk to me about what was said last night, do you agree with the sentiment? Do you essentially think that Labour MPs who attack NATO or who potentially give some support to the Russian aggression should be kicked out of the party, irrespective of whether Keir Starmer said it or not? Do you think that should be the case?
Oh, it's a matter for Keir Starmer and for the Chief Whip. But what I would say is that we all need to get behind NATO, and I fully support NATO, as does Keir Starmer and the Labour Party, and we have to work together with our allies, shoulder to shoulder, in support of the Ukrainian people. We need to give President Zelensky every support we can. Yeah, he's demonstrated inspirational leadership for his people, and I think we should be guided by what the Ukrainian people are asking from us.
Yeah, but this is a really important point because, you know, Keir Starmer's repeatedly talked about how there is unity across the political benches in Britain. And I ask you this again, it's not going to be your call, but I'm just saying, in principle, should Labour MPs who attack NATO, they shouldn't be Labour MPs, should they?
Well, as you've said, it's not for me, it's for the Chief Whip and the leader of the party. And my view is that we should all be supporting NATO, and that's what I do. It's what my colleagues in the Parliamentary Labour Party do. OK, Bill, appreciate your time this afternoon. Thank you very much indeed for joining us here on GBNews from Parliament. Thank you indeed. OK, well, that is it for us for today. There will be continuing coverage, of course, of the situation in Ukraine throughout the afternoon and into the evening here on GB News. Tom Harwood is back at 9:30 tomorrow morning. Gloria at 12 with Prime Minister's Question Time, and I'll be here at 3 o'clock. Up next, though, it is Colin Brazier 4 to 6. Before all that, let's bring you up to date with the latest weather from the Met Office down in Exeter. I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching.
Hello again. Blue skies across the north today, cloudier skies further south. Most of us will be in the cloudier boat tomorrow with rain and drizzle in the west, but it should be another sunny day across northwest Scotland, where this area of high pressure will hold on. But down to the south, we've got low pressure and weather fronts, which are slowly trudging northwards, certainly bringing a wet evening across Devon, Cornwall, much of Hampshire, and that rain extending across parts of southeast England and trickling into South Wales too. That rain will continue to spread into the Midlands also, but northern England northwards staying mostly dry and with clear skies. Across Scotland, we will see a frost forming pretty quickly here this evening, and by dawn, certainly in rural spots, down to -3, -4. Further south, a long way from freezing. Temperatures in Cardiff and London to start Wednesday, 6 or 7 Celsius. But it will be grey, it will be damp. That rain will trickle into parts of northern England, particularly west of the Pennines. Parts of the northeast of England may stay dry. The rain will spread into Northern Ireland, so a very different day here and across North Wales compared to today. Eventually, some of that rain will spread into southwest Scotland, but much of Scotland dry, and again, that far northwest corner staying dry, fine, and pretty sunny. Temperatures in the south quite mild, but not feeling all that mild with the dull and dank weather, which will continue to trickle northwards during the course of the evening, eventually clouding over across the northwest of Scotland. The rain tending to ease off in many areas, but another line of rain pushes into Wales and southwest England as we go into Thursday. And this line of rain is a slow-moving weather front, which will only very gradually trickle into the Midlands, parts of northern England during the day on Thursday. Should brighten up in Northern Ireland, probably brightening up in Wales and southwest England during the day on Thursday as well, and staying largely dry across eastern parts. Again, temperatures in the south, double figures, further north, 7, 8 or 9 Celsius. Goodbye.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows. Every day, we ask the questions that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories,